going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review, and this is our twice-weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this time we are back for more of our Phyrexia All Will Be One main story reviews with Assault on New Phyrexia Episode 4, Impossible Odds by Seanan McGuire. My quick review at the top of this one is things happened in this one, which sometimes we can't always say that, so that's an important distinction. Yes. Things occurred, the story was told, progress happened, and so because of that, I think, in and of itself, I think this story is worth reading. Obviously, I'll get into more of my opinions as we get into the full review itself, but that alone would be enough, in my opinion, to make people want to read this story, or I feel like you should want to read this story for that reason.
Okay, I would think that you would want to read this story as well, because there were pieces of this story that allowed Seanan McGuire to shine through, and I feel like that's what I can't say about the last few stories.
Fair? Okay, so if either of those quick reviews make the story sound interesting to you and you want to go read that story before coming back here for our review, we just delve into spoilery territory. That's kind of how it works. We're reviewing a story. So if you don't want to be spoiled by us, please feel free to go to the top link in the description down below. It will take you directly to this story so that you can read it for yourselves. We try to remove as many barriers as possible. And then whether you've read the story already and you're sticking around, or whether you're about to go, we would love it if you would come back here and join us so that you can continue the conversation with us in the comments down below. We want it to be a conversation. This is not all one-sided. We are not the only opinions that matter. We want to hear from you. Are there things that you liked that we didn't talk about? Are there things that you disliked that we didn't talk about and you think that they should be brought up? Do you agree with what we've said? Do you disagree? Any and all of those things, we want to hear from you. Like I said, comments down below. Keep the conversation going with us and your fellow commenters, to be honest. And then very quickly, before we move on to the full review itself, we just got to do a little bit of housekeeping. This is a very, very busy week for us here at Geek for All. If you missed it already, we have had 2 pieces of content every day, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. You can check out the new Gluten Free-for-All video that came out Tuesday, along with Amy on Video Games for All, facing the rest of the Elite Four and the Champion in Pokemon Sapphire.
Yes.
Yesterday, Wednesday, we had a special video released on this channel. I don't want to give too much away, but you should definitely go check it out, and we would love to hear your feedback on what you thought of that particular video, because that was a blast to make, and I'm super curious what you all think about it. As well as, yesterday on Video Games for All was the first episode ever of Amy, for the first time ever, seeing Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. That is going to be a very interesting playthrough, and we highly encourage you to check it out. Get it on the ground floor. First episode is up right now. And then today, when you're watching this video, I should say when this video comes out. I don't know when you're watching this video. Welcome to the internet. This video comes out on Thursday at around noon. Well, on Thursday at around 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we are going to be participating in the Phyrexia All Will Be One Early Access Streamer event sponsored by Wizards of the Coast. We thank them for having us, and we would love to see you there. If this is after Thursday, then you can definitely go check out the VOD. There might even be 2 of them because we're going to split it up a little bit, but regardless, you can check out the VODs on the channel, or if you're watching this on Thursday, we would love to have you come and join us. If it is between the hours of like 4 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Eastern, we might not be there. We will be back very shortly, so be aware of that. We have to take a quick break in the middle of the day, or the middle of the evening there, and then we will be back for the rest of the night, and streaming into the night for that. So we would love to have you. We're going to be playing Limited for like 7+ hours for the new set. So if you want to check that out, we would love to have you join us. Like I said, that will be right here on this channel. And for anything that we're doing, please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell on this channel or the other 2. By the way, Video Games for All and Gluten Free for All that I mentioned, links down in the description box below. I'm trying to get through this as quickly as possible because I want to get to this review, but we're doing so much stuff this week because it is pre-release week. Again, 2 pieces of content every single day, including tomorrow, Friday, where we're going to be releasing our standard 2 pre-release videos from Champion Card Collector in Poughkeepsie, New York. We're going to be opening kits there to see what cool stuff we get. We'll take our time, go through the individual cards, check out the art, see what value we open, etc. And then we will be filming around the store to see what other cool cards other people open as well. And we highly encourage you to check all of that stuff out. Champion is an amazing environment, and we always appreciate them having us. So show them some love in the comments and stuff, and show us some love. Let us know if you appreciate what we're doing. And like I said, subbing, ringing the bell helps immensely for that. It shows us that you are enjoying the things that we're doing. And last but not least, especially with all the crazy amounts of work that we're doing this week, if not all the crazy work that we do anyway, likes and shares go a very long way. Let your friends know, let your family know. If you know somebody that would enjoy the stuff that we're doing, tell them about us, because YouTube doesn't always. So thank you for any and all support that you are willing to give. And now I'm so sorry for the delay. On to the full review itself. Like I said, a lot of stuff going on, so I appreciate you bearing with us on that. We want this stuff to be seen. That's why we're making it. So for this video, the last review that we did of episode 3 of the main story, we talked about the fact that at the end, or towards the end, Nahiri's like bandage kind of flaps off a little bit, and I made the comment, I was like, oh, it's like a little bit of a cop-out, so now they don't have to have the awkward discussion amongst the planeswalkers of like,
yeah,
I saw Nahiri's bandage come off, so she's been Phyrexianized, but she didn't say anything.
I'm
and then
telling on her.
And then Melira turns around and says, oh, well, I knew. She told me a while ago, but XYZ. And then at the beginning of the story, they just did that anyway. Okay. I try not to talk out of both sides of my mouth, so I'm aware of like the hypocrisy of me complaining when they didn't do it and then complaining when they did. But I felt like both ways didn't make sense, because if you're going to commit to one way, then commit to one way, even if it's a bad way, instead of like overcorrecting by fixing it in the next story as well, which just means that you're over-explaining something that didn't need to be explained. Like, it would have just been assumed that other people saw her bandage flap off, and especially because later on Kaito makes the point of, like, saying that he hopes that she died during her sacrifice, because...
Which, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, and we'll get into that, but... I don't know, like... but it does allow them to talk about Jace and Melira again, of like, well, why can't we just help Jace? Because you have a mission, and Jace would be held up for a couple of days recovering from this, and you can't just... They didn't even bring it up this time, they brought it up in the last story, but you can't just, whatchamacallit, have him laid up in the Fair Basilica, just like, oh, I'm recovering. It's like, you're surrounded by a Phyrexian army. The word army was used. Like, you can't just do that. You can't just have that be what's happening. So, that excuse wasn't even given this time. They were just like, well, we don't have time. Jace has to help us do whatever, blah, blah, blah. So, okay. So that's 2 people now that Melira was here to help, or could have helped, and then just didn't. Just couldn't, or whatever. Like, it's just very annoying. It's like, you have this ability, but you can't use it. Anyway. Then we get to, I mentioned Kaito. So I guess we'll do Kaito's first, since I mentioned it. Kaito, in general, a bunch of them are talking about Nahiri now. And Kaito brings up that he hopes that she died, because he was afraid of them having to face her, because he says none of them could have taken her on one-on-one, because of how powerful she is / was. Now, we know that. She's an Old Walker. She's the only one of them who is an Old Walker. They have all been depowered thanks to the mending, but she has still had millennia to perfect her powers, like Old Walker or not, or pre-mending or not. She's had a lot of time to work on it, and she's very strong, and they're on a plane made of metal that she can manipulate. It's all of it is bad for them.
Right.
So he brings up that he hopes that she died. Now, I know you kind of said it already, but you had thoughts on that.
Fucked up. You know, But, whatever, I guess.
Well, Nahiri had said, it kind of internally, but Nahiri had said that she hoped that she would go with them and help them for as long as she could, and then she would turn, because once she turned, that would give the others a better chance of killing her. Because if they tried to kill her before she had turned, she would defend herself. She knew she would. And she felt or knew that she would kill them. And didn't want that because she knew that, like, I'm a Phyrexian, or I'm going to be a Phyrexian, so I don't want to kill these people for trying to stop me, but also I'm going to kill them if they try to stop me. So it was just like, all right, so now Kaito's the one bringing it up, like, well, I hope she's dead, because, God, it would suck to have to fight her. He's not wrong, but still, you don't, that's the quiet part. You say that, you keep that in here.
You don't say it out loud. But maybe they had him say it because there's gonna be a part where they have to fight her, you know, like...
We've got one more main story to go after this one, and it will be the video that we have coming out, hopefully Monday. Keep our fingers crossed. We've got a lot of content that we're making this week. Did you know that? We're going to try to have it out for Monday. We're going to be at pre-releases this weekend, but we should be able to bang it out, hopefully, between now and then. But if we can't, we'll get it out to you as soon as we can. Thank you for bearing with us with literally everything that we're doing. We're trying our best. And then Tyvar. So these two characters are characters that we hadn't really heard from. I mean, they spoke, but it was like kind of surface level stuff. And I want you to be able to talk about him, but I also want to talk about that thing that I realized kind of about why I don't love this stuff. Do you want to talk about your thing first, or you want me to go first?
I can talk about my thing first, just in case yours is going to, like, bleed into the next thing.
Okay. Do you want to read it?
Sure.
Okay, so Tyvar, again, still talking about Nahiri, says, "We honor Nahiri's sacrifice and the ending she wrote for it by finishing this in victory."
Yeah. When you read that, I was like, ugh, of course, like, only a soldier would say that, right? And then I was like, and like... I forgot the second piece I was going to talk about for that.
Oh. Yeah, I remember you saying you felt like it was, like, standard fare of what, like, a soldier-type individual would say and whatever. But
Yeah, and, like, how kind of annoying that is, because it's like, okay, just because you can frame it in your mind like, oh, a victory is the most important thing, like, the rest of us who, you know, have to deal with, you know, caring a bit more about staying alive.
Sure.
You know, we don't necessarily share that sentiment to quite that degree, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this task that they entered into would lend itself to that, though. Because it's, like, it's kind of, they came here assuming that at least some of them would die or be completed.
Which, as far as they know, is death. Like,
right.
They don't know anything different, right? We have our suspicions, but...
So, I mean, they kind of all, again, they didn't take the time to, like, really flesh out the details of the conversations that all of these planeswalkers had prior to actually coming here. But, you know, they were friends and had a whole conversation about it for sure. Just trust us. So, yeah, I mean, they, like, arguably knew what they were getting themselves into and that it was, like, pretty much a death sentence, despite the fact that they, like, knew how important it was to do anyway, and so they were just going to try. Even though it was implausible, at least, that they would actually succeed.
Yeah, and I before I go to what I was talking about, these next two quotes actually follow the one that we just read. So, kind of in response to, no, definitely in response to what Kaito said about, I hope she's dead, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to fight her. Tyvar says, at times it's better to grieve a companion than it is to risk fighting against them.
Yeah, I definitely wanted you to write down that quote.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that kind of goes back to what we talked about for the last story, where, did I talk about that for the last story? Well, regardless, I've talked about it in many JaARs in the past.
Sure.
You know, you can't make people do things, and being able to do so, like, wouldn't be a healthy and good thing regardless. So
Consent matters.
so you don't want to be able to do that. So sometimes, what was the quote? Sometimes it's better to
Grieve a companion than it is to risk fighting against them.
Yeah, so, like, you know, I've referenced, like, my separation from my family and the fact that it was a very difficult thing to do, and I kind of didn't feel like I had a choice. And that's kind of like what I thought of when I heard that quote. Like, okay, because there was a whole grieving process that occurs, even though these people haven't died, right? Because you've sort of expunged them from your life, there's this whole grieving process that occurs, even if you're doing it with the best intentions and for reasons of helping yourself, like, you're still going to have that grieving process. And so that can be, like, incredibly more healing than sitting there and continually trying to attempt to get them to hear you out and sort of live their lives better. When you're doing that, and sometimes you just have to leave them behind, and that hurts, and it's difficult, and it feels like your fault.
Even if you know it's, like, no, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it any easier to do.
Right.
Sure.
So, I think we were talking about this during one of our streams.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right. We stream every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern, by the way, right here on this channel, MTG Arena, if you're interested. We'd love to see you there. And then the quote that kind of follows sort of this train is, I think Kaya was the one that, like, said to Kaito, she was like, wow, thanks for that. You know, in terms of, like, being that morbid. And you said, like, it's effed up.
Yeah.
Kaito's response is, this doesn't, wow, I'll try that again, sorry. This doesn't seem like a good place for pretty illusions. When we don't see things as they really are, we just wind up getting hurt.
Yeah. That was a great line, because that's very much the sort of parallel that I make in a lot of these videos as well, where I'm saying, like, the reason why I couldn't take those people with me is because I was able to see the truth, and they're still in a place where they can't, right? You know, I can sit there and shout it in their faces, but if they're unable to see it, or they would rather live in denial, I can't do anything about that, right? And so pretty illusions to me means denial, right? Because you've created these illusions to be prettier than reality, right? And so this is a place where that's not going to fly, right? And the reality needs to be spoken. So that's kind of his justification for having said, well, I hope she died because we can't take her, in a fight because she's a lot better than us.
Yeah.
And he's essentially saying, like, the gloves are off now, like, niceties be damned, because now, like, the only thing that matters is getting to this tree and blowing it up.
Yep.
In the hope, the distant hope that we can save some other planes from this terrible fate.
Yeah.
That this plane is suffering, and if we can't, every plane will suffer it.
Right. And so that's why it's worth the risks that they're taking, or at least according to them it is, right? That as far as they're concerned, that's why it's worth it. So we've said this many times, if this is your first JaAR, interesting one to choose, I suppose, but thank you for being here regardless. We've said many times, minus Luca, which nobody understands that one, let's just move on. All of the Planeswalkers that are completed in this set of stories are Planeswalkers that are older, that are fan favorites, and that the current story team clearly, and I'm saying clearly and definitively, clearly does not know how to write for. We've talked about it on stream with many other people. We're not the only ones who have said it. We're not trying to say that we are. Everybody understands that that's what happened. They took characters that they did not understand, they didn't know how to write for, and they completed each and every one of them. This story had Jace in it. You wouldn't know it, except for the 2 times that it said Jace groaned or Jace moaned, because they're very happy to have him be dying or slowly being completed, because there was very little dialogue that was written for him in this story, because they don't know how to do it. So they're very happy to not do it. The quote that I have here from Jace is, "Can't save the multiverse without me." Which again, we talked about it in the last video, so I'm not going to go too hard into it. He is with Kaya the entire story. The start of the story, he is with Kaya. The end of the story, he is still with Kaya. At no point in between was he not with Kaya. And yet, the guy who is slowly and or quickly turning into a Phyrexian is still the one holding your only thing that you have to save this plane, despite the fact that Kaya had it at the end of the last story, right before she gave it to him at the end.
Yep.
There was no reason for it. It doesn't make any sense, but it was there because...
But they literally, like, determined in the last story that they didn't need him.
Because Kaya could do it.
All they needed was the frickin' Silex. And yet they gave it back to him, and now he's standing here having the gall to say that they can't save it without him. Like, no, that's not true.
Yep.
You're here because you deserve to be here, but the second you start looking Phyrexian, you're getting ditched, and we're getting the hell out of here, and we are going to blow this thing up without you.
Yep. So it really felt like it was like, well, Jace has to be here, but we don't have to write for him because we don't know how. That's why we're completing him. So let's just hurry to get him completed, because all he's going to say is, jokingly, you can't save the multiverse without me, and then later on, as he's slowly turning and moaning and groaning, he's going to say, we gotta hurry up, we gotta hurry up, we gotta hurry up, let's hurry up, because that's the way that you initiate urgency, is by having one of your characters say that we need to hurry up, as opposed to showing us, which they also did, by showing the explosions and the blind eternities appearing in the tree, and them saying, it looks like we're too late, but we're still going to go forward and try to blow up this tree to stop the bleeding, right, to some degree. But yet you still have Jace going, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. You don't need that. Your story is doing that for you in increasing the urgency of what you're trying to accomplish. And besides, Jace wouldn't be the character to do that. The whole time that they're walking up to Elesh Norn's Citadel in the Fair Basilica and then going down into the Mycosynth Gardens and into the Seed Core, Jace says nothing. Except for that one line and like maybe one line before it of like, can't save the multiverse without me. Like, don't think I'm not listening. I'm just not saying anything. And it's like, but why? You're the master strategist here. I get that he would be a little distracted. We talked about this last time with the Vraska stuff, but he's still moving forward because he knows or feels and says that they need to accomplish their task. If they need to accomplish their task, be part of the planning process, you moron. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You're just turning the smartest, again, we talked about this, maybe third smartest person in the multiverse into a fool. And again, it's because you can't write for him. And so you already took out Tamio, because Tamio's old stories, where she spoke in nothing but $10 words, she had a very interesting character and she was great. The new Tamio stories were just her talking like anybody else. And she's not like anybody else. But she is when you Phyrexianize her, and now it's easier. Well, we wouldn't know what Phyrexianized Tamio would be like, so this is clearly how she would be. And this leads me to the realization that I had. I get very frustrated with these stories recently. And I've really been trying to like pinpoint what it is. And I think I have it. And I'd love to hear from other people, including you, as to what folks think about it.
Before you get into
Please.
that, I just want to say...
Yeah, please.
That aspect with Jace didn't bother me quite as much as it did you.
Okay.
I think because it made me think of like when we're like on our way home and we're like stuck in traffic and I have to pee.
Okay.
And there's nowhere to go. And I just have to hold it. Right?
And so
like
you have
I'm
to
like, hurry up, hurry up. I know you can't hurry up. But like I can't help but tell you to hurry up because I have to pee
now. Very funny. That's really funny.
So that's what it made me think of. So
like, there you go. Phyresis feels like you really have to pee until you don't. That's hilarious. I like that a lot. Okay.
So I just kind of like identified with him enough to be like, okay, I understand why he's doing this, even though like it doesn't make sense for him to do it.
Okay. Very interesting. That's funny. I like that. Yeah, a year ago, 2 years ago, we read through and reviewed, because we hadn't before now, the Battle for Zendikar / Oath of the Gatewatch stories. And it's such a weird experience going back to the older stories that were written by the in-house story team, the salaried, benefited in-house story team, who made the stories from Origins until Ixalan, basically, and tried to make it one cohesive Gatewatch-themed story.
And it was.
It was, yeah.
They succeeded at that. Even with all the different styles of story that you got out of it, you had different people that excelled at different things, and they were always the one who wrote it, and it was just incredible.
And again, we're definitely not the first people that have said go back to that model. I, in fact, have arguably said it less than most, because I understand that they're not going to do that. But what I wish they would do is pay their authors enough to give them the time to read all of the things, and or give them access. You can't force the older employees to do it, but give them access to those older employees, if the older employees are interested in having those conversations, to talk about their motivations in writing those characters and why they were so good at it. Maybe you pay them a consulting fee as well. You'd have to shell out more money, and I know you're not going to do it as a company, but that's my solution. But again, we're getting way too into the weeds. I could do a whole video on that myself. The thing that
I could just improve their marketing.
The thing that I wanted...
more money.
The thing that I wanted to actually say, my main point... No, it's not your fault. I did it too. My main point here is, for example, when we did the Battle for Zendikar Oath of the Gatewatch stories, there was actual conflict based in dialogue between two characters. Not just, I'm mad at you and you suck, but like, actual, like, moral conflict of like, why are you doing that? That doesn't make sense to me. Well, here's why it makes sense to me. Well, that doesn't make sense to me. Maybe some people feel like that's a waste of word count, but I think it's the best use of word count. Again, I've said it before, I will say it again. Magic wants to be Marvel. They've almost flat out said it before in their the MTG story, like weekly MTG thing that they did years ago that we reviewed at the time and had major problems with, where they flat out were like, yeah, this is our plan, and they basically just laid out all the things that Marvel already did in their cinematic universe, because they were like, that made money, we're gonna make money by doing this, which isn't gonna work. But
they kind of referenced it too when there was like a video that they put out of like talking about the lore that they were gonna do and like how they were gonna go about it or something.
Oh, okay.
You definitely got that vibe.
Yeah.
Is that they were very strongly trying
yeah, that's what I was talking about, no?
Oh, I thought it was something different that you were talking about.
No, the video that they made with the three guys sitting on the couch like talking to each other.
I got the impression that you were talking about an article.
No. Yeah, the video. Because we reviewed that video and it was very blatantly obvious that that's what they were doing. They, like I said, they almost flat out said it.
Yeah.
The first Avengers movie, when all these heroes met one another, what's the first thing that they did? They fought each other. They fought each other. They all fought one another.
I said shawarma.
Oh, shawarma. That's the last thing that they did in that movie. I know. They fought each other. There was conflict there. And it wasn't just grr, punch, punch. It was why. Why are they fighting? Well, Thor is trying to protect his brother despite the fact that his brother's a dickbag. And Iron Man's not okay with that. And Captain America's not okay with the two of them fighting. But also Thor is going to be Thor. And he's going to be childish. And he's going to be powerful. And Captain America's going to step up and be the stalwart one. But whatever the case may be, they fought each other for a reason. And there was a reason behind them having conflict with one another. In this story, any amount of conflict that was mentioned wasn't a thing. They don't disagree with one another. Everybody just, the person that says the thing, everybody goes along with it and they move on.
Yep. Even if it makes no sense.
Because they need to get from point A to point B, they only have 10 stories to do it in. If you're talking about the main story and these however many characters, they only have 5 stories to do it in, you don't have time for that.
Right.
Except
push it into the box.
Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't fit? Push harder.
Yeah. But, because who wants character work in their stories about individual characters and individuals? They don't. They don't want it. I like, the company seems to not want it. And I don't get why. Some of the best parts of the Battle for Zendikar Oath of the Gatewatch stories, which, by the way, there were like 22 plus of them, so they had time to actually have those conflicts and build these characters as people. But the best moment in that story was when they were all in Seagate together discussing their plan. Because they disagreed with one another, their personalities came out in the ways that they disagreed with one another, and they were able to say, this is how I want to do it, this is what we think is best. Well, I don't think that because X, Y, and Z, and I'm that type of person. And when Kiora, for example, didn't get her way, she flew out the window on a wave of water and did her own thing. And now the rest of the Planeswalkers had to say, oh my god, what are we going to do now? She's flying off the handle. Well, here's how we're going to change things around. They don't do that. Because even in the discussion that we just talked about with Kaito and Tyvar and Kaya to a degree, right? Kaya says to Tyvar, hey, thanks for that, right? Still sarcastically and jokingly telling him that he's being morbid. And what does he do? He gives a one-liner. Now, the one-liner is important and we just talked about it for a reason, but there's no follow-up to that. Kaya doesn't even say, okay, I understand and I agree with you. He says that line and then they're on to the next thing that they're doing. There's no conflict in dialogue. It doesn't occur. These characters don't have personality.
And it's annoying. Well, I mean, Tyvar has a personality of being chauvinistic. But nobody mentions it.
They don't have personality clashes.
Right.
Ever. One person says a thing, the other person says no or yes, and they move on. They are never allowed to have a discussion of a conflict. Ever.
Yep.
It bothers me to no end, especially with these newer characters, where the whole point of these newer characters being the ones to helm the process going forward is because you don't know how to write for the other ones. Well, guess what? That means you do know how to write for these, doesn't it? You can give these people their own personalities. They've only been in however many stories. Read those stories. It's not that hard. It doesn't take that long. And if there was somebody else who wrote it, get that person to write it again. Because that's how it used to work in the past, like Amy said. You got a person who wrote for a particular character and they were very good at it. And hey, if that person wasn't available to write that story, you better believe they were working with the person who was going to take over to write that story for them. Or in that spot. So that they could talk about the motivations, their interests, their disinterests, etc.
Yeah, but the thing is, a huge company doesn't care about those things.
I know.
So they don't understand the concept of, well, the human connection and character development that happens in these stories is the reason why people like them.
Yeah.
It's a simple concept for us to say out loud, hear each other say, and understand, right? But a corporation doesn't understand that.
Yeah. My favorite Planeswalker, a Johnny. You want to know why I like him? His character is super goddamn interesting. He's big and strong and powerful and a pacifist. That is sick. That's so cool. And hell, when they get to a point with a Johnny's character, where when they have in the past, of like, I'm a pacifist, but I have to fight now, that's intriguing. Because he's a pacifist, and now his moral center is being challenged. And so how does he fix that? Does he say, you know what, for now it's for the greater good and I'm going to fight? Or does he say, no matter what, I will find another way to handle this conflict? And so he tries to find another way, despite the fact that he is big and strong and powerful and could probably kill anybody that he came across that was committing evil acts or bad acts or whatever. He could. He chooses not to. And so the conflict of, there's a bad person here. Do I fight them or do I find another way is intriguing. And to hear his dialogue about it would be intriguing and interesting. And it doesn't have to end in a fight, because he could find an interesting way around it. But instead, he needs to be Phyrexianized, and he needs to just fight.
Yep.
So...
but he can, tell Elspeth how happy he is that he sees her now and wants to bring her home.
And that was at the end of this story. That was somewhat interesting to me, because again, if you're gonna do this, which at this point you are, and there's nothing I can say about it, if you're gonna do this, that's at least somewhat of an interesting way of doing it, right? Is that you're having him be himself to her, but with this sheen of Elish Norn all over him. And her point is, you're not him, you will never be him again, and I'm not going to listen to you. And the fact that you're using his words to me in the way that he would say them is honestly just making me angrier. And so now we're gonna fight each other. And it's gonna hurt me because I love this person that you were, but it needs to be done. Whereas Tyvar and Tybalt, complete opposite. I hate you, I've always hated you, sure now you're a Phyrexian, I'm gonna kill you either way. Like, that's, and honestly, I'm okay with that. Both sides of the same coin, cool, let's do it, that's great. I want to talk about these two things before we talk about Tybalt, because I brought them up, but that's at the end. You talked about when they got to the seed core and found the tree, it mentioned that Kaya recognized, or I guess as they were going to the seed core, Kaya recognized the smell of Kaldheim.
Mm. Yes, Kaya did.
And only Kaya.
Right. Not Tyvar. Guy who's actually from Kaldheim.
And was rightfully very upset about the existence of this Realmbreaker world tree.
Right.
Because I loved that one line. I didn't write it down, but I liked what he said where he was like, they've taken the very soul of Kaldheim and used it to, you know...
disseminate their bullshit.
Yeah, which is great. What a cool line that was. I liked that quite a bit. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. And then, I guess going back to the Ajani thing, right? You're good on that part?
Oh, yeah.
It just...
stupid.
Yeah, it just also should have been Tyvar. Moving on. The line about Elspeth when she sees Ajani and or is about to fight Ajani or whatever, the line says, she felt her entire... She felt like her entire body was an old wound that had been sliced open, larger than ever, and unhealable.
It's pretty fucked.
It's also pretty great because when you think about it, Jace has one of those. I mean, it's not an old wound that was reopened, but it's a wound that won't heal. So while she's not being completed, she feels like she's being completed because she is now in conflict with her old friend who has been completed. Like...
Wait, who are we talking about right
Elspeth.
now? Oh, okay.
From when she saw Ajani and or was interacting with Ajani. Did you have more to... Oh, okay. Okay. Let's talk about Tybalt.
Yeah, I thought for a second that you meant that she had that relationship with Jace.
No.
I was like, when did Elspeth have that kind of a relationship with Jace?
No, fair question.
I was like, am I wrong about who we're talking about here?
Yeah, no, fair question, yeah. Okay. So, while this story didn't have it, I assume the next one will, because I assume we're going to get at least a moment of Elspeth versus Ajani and Tybalt versus Tyvar. If we do, I assume they're going to show this picture. Because that is the art for Tybalt versus Tyvar. Now, this is the first time that Tybalt has been brought up in this story. The story literally says that Tyvar has not seen him since Kaldheim, right? So, again, I've talked about this in the past, and some people have come back and said, well, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. This is the picture of Tybalt versus Tyvar. And I have many times talked about the fact that it very much feels like the story team and the art team don't exist in the same company. They just don't, because they don't talk to one another. So here's the picture of Tybalt and Tyvar, but Tybalt, I'm going to leave it here. Now, credit where credit is due, the tail is correct. So I didn't put in the description of the tail, because the description of the tail from the story is the tail, in my opinion, that we're seeing here. Where it was bifurcated only at the tip previously, but when he got Phyrexianized, it was bifurcated all the way down to the bottom, and it was 2 spiny points. You can see that here. I didn't include the quote because it's accurate, and so I don't need to talk about it except, like I said, to not be a hypocrite and acknowledge when they do something correctly. But here is the text, word-for-word description of when they see Tybalt for the first time. So you cannot tell me that it's at a different time when he's fighting Tyvar later on. They haven't started fighting yet. Here's the description that they give prior to their fight. Tybalt was a nightmare of bony plates and protrusions, connected by raw, braided sinew, recognizable as himself only through the smirk on the remaining fleshy part of his face.
Yet.
Is that what you're looking at? Because that ain't what I'm looking at. Maybe there's another picture that they're supposed to be. This ain't it, y'all. This is Tybalt with a weird-ass arm. I'm going to steal Amy's quote. She said it to me earlier. That's not me.
It just looks like Tybalt with a weird-ass arm.
And the tail. Although you can't exactly see where the tail connects to him, so that could be anything. But we know it's the tail because they did it correctly.
It could just be something behind him.
Yeah.
And landscape.
Yeah. Well, and in front of him. Like, it wheels around.
It coils.
But regardless. Yes. It's Tybalt with a weird arm. And honestly, yes, I understand that it is a business and they want the free clicks and the free marketing by showing that picture and having people be able to be like, oh, look at his arm. Tybalt was completed. Look, check it out. And people circle it and share it out and etc. Whereas if they had shown what it really was, maybe people would have been able to tell just from the picture. Maybe they wouldn't.
Yeah.
But I guess the flavor text of the card says that it's Tybalt, so maybe. But regardless, that's pretty inexcusable to me.
Yeah.
Like,
because it's so far off. It's
very far
close.
off. No. Like I said, the tail is correct, but it's just the tail? Come on now. It's very sad. That's really my point. It's sad is what it is. Because I'm reading this story, and not for nothing, that's a pretty cool description of what Tybalt looks like. I'd love to see that. What do you mean he just looks like himself but with a weird arm? Like, why? Why wouldn't you want your story to depict what your card does, or vice versa? Because Sean McGuire did a very good job of describing what Tybalt looks like. That's pretty sick. Let's see art of it. Oh. Sucks to be us, I guess. And again, I don't know who that sucks more for. The artist of this card or Sean McGuire. Because they both did hard work to complete their task that they were paid for. And now I gotta sit here and say that they're both wrong? Who's wrong? One of them clearly is. And again, it's not either Seanan nor the artist's fault. It's not. It's the company's fault. You have art directors and you have a story coordinator. Why can't they talk to each other? You work for the same fucking company. Write an email like anybody else in the working world in 2023 does. A single email. It's not hard. Because one of the two things was done first. Either the art description was given to the artist, or the words were written by Sean McGuire. One of those two things was done first, unless they, by a freak occurrence, were done at literally the same time. And I cannot see a world where that is a thing. So as soon as the first one is done, email the other person that thing. Because you're already emailing it to the artist and or the author. So just copy and paste it and email it to the other person. To the art director or the story director.
Just add them to the email chain.
Yeah, sure. CC it. Sure. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
So that everything gets sent to them and there's no mistake, of something falling through the cracks.
Yep. There's less than no excuse. It's 2023. If this were 1993, when the game first came out, sure, maybe it would be a problem because am I going to do this all over the phone? Okay, I just spoke to the author, this is what they're doing. Okay, I just spoke to the person, this is what they're doing. Like, sure, maybe.
I mean, in the 90s, you had big, fancy corporate offices that everybody went to, and you just go and knock on the person's door and talk to them.
Yep. And they would have had the in-house story team because they would have been paying them a salary and continued to do all that stuff because that went away only, a few years ago or whatever. So, that's the end of my rant on that. What I will say is, at the end of this story, we have three distinct groups of people going forward. We have Koth and the Mirrans, who are working, the Goblin Explosive team or whatever, who are working to free Karn, who they found in this story as well, by the way. You have Elspeth and Tyvar, who are fighting Ajani and Tybalt, respectively. And you have Jace, Kaya, and Kaito, who are moving forward to the Seed Core to attempt to detonate the Silex. The final story is for the main stories, is what we're going to be reviewing next time. Like I said, hopefully on Monday. We will do our best. Bear with us. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. You'll find out exactly when the video comes out, if it's not on Monday, but even if it is. And then we have two side stories as well, because we need to find out about the last Planeswalker who is completed, who, if you are only following us, you don't know who it is yet, so I will keep that spoiler free for now. But yeah, we have two more stories to talk about after the main story is done, but we're doing them in the order that they were released, so that's how we're doing it.
Before we
Please.
officially wrap up on this, I'd just like to say, Vraska and Nahiri are two characters that are both very important to me.
Yeah.
Have been for years, and I'm not sitting here weeping over this story or even the last story, Because, like, they don't make you sad about it.
Like I said, they definitely attempted to make you sad about the Jace Veraska thing. Like I mentioned last time, what, 80-85%, I think, of the way there they got, but they were still missing. They slipped a little, in my opinion.
I feel like it was a lot less than that.
Fair. That's fair. And you can give us your opinions as well in the comments down below on that video or this one, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I mean, it could be partially because I knew going in already, you know, who was going to be Phyrexianized.
I guessed one of them blatantly the day that Wizards was like, 5 of these 10 Planeswalkers will be completed. And I was like, oh, it's going to be this one and this one because they don't know how to write for them, and then probably some others as well. And it turned out to be basically everyone that they didn't know how to write for. And again, like I said, and Luca for some goddamn forsaken reason. I don't know why.
Because he's expendable.
Yeah.
That's why.
My favorite shit. I don't condone ever.
That's why Tybalt, too. Because he's expendable also.
He wasn't even listed among the 10 because he's not the assaulting group, right?
Right.
He was completed back at the end of Kaldheim, essentially, but it was only teased. Like, he saw the oil and touched it and was like, what's this? And that's how the story ended for him. So, he got completed from that. But anyway, I'm not going to say what I was going to say. It's irrelevant. We'll move on.
Okay.
It's fine. It's not worth it.
So, I was just going to say, yeah, there was potential for me to get real fucking upset when reading these stories and losing these planeswalkers that were really important to me.
Yep.
I couldn't even muster caring that much.
Yeah.
Because I already knew who it was going to be, and I was sad back when I found out.
Definitively.
But these stories just aren't good enough for me to care about these characters. And they're characters I already care about.
But they're the newer versions that aren't their older selves. They're just not. They're just not. Like, they are, because it's not an alternate universe or anything, but they're not being written with the same degree of understanding or care.
Right.
They're just not.
So, like, I'm more upset about not being upset than I was reading the story.
I will say, I should have talked about it in the last story, and I didn't. I'm grateful that they were actually able to move away from, with Jason Veraska, I'm glad that they were able to move away from what it looked like the path they were trying to go in with War of the Spark and that debacle, where War of the Spark made it look like Jace and Veraska were going to start moving away from one another again, and Jace might start gravitating back towards Liliana because boobs.
Right.
Because boobs sell cards, and we can put boobs on the boxes, boobs.
Because Gideon's dead, and so she can't have him as her love interest. So, you know.
Yep. And so it was going to be, you know, because you can't make Veraska look sexy, and you want to sell things by making people look sexy, so you go with Liliana.
She's green, so she's not sexy, right? Even though she has a dress with a slit that comes all the way up to her thing she shouldn't have a slit all the way up to, okay?
So, anyway, I'm glad that they moved away from that and basically just ignored it completely and just had the two of them be like, look, I love you, you're going to be okay, I'm going to be here for you. And then it like doesn't work out, but still, it's not because of some weird convoluted like, well, you're not listening to me and you're not there for me, and like, they're fighting for no reason. Will they, won't they? It's like, no, this is not a sitcom.
Right.
Like, they're together, let them be together. And especially for this, like, heartbreaking moment, let them be together as lovers and not in conflict with one another right before it. Like, it's not worth it. It doesn't make any sense. And again, it gets to be more emotional if they're actually still interested in one another, instead of, like I said, weirdly trying to manufacture heat or hatred between them that would break them up somehow. And oh my God, will they? Nobody gives a shit. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Because you've already ruined Nissa and Chandra where you can't go back now because you have to try to keep continuity. But at least that one you can just ignore because it didn't go far enough. So.
Yeah, I mean, for the Vraska and Jace thing, like, when Jace, like, took her through the illusion, like, they tried to, like, take it there, right? They tried to, like, make it cool. And it almost was. But they, like, rushed through it. And...
only have so many words.
And then...
gotta do 5 stories. Hurry up.
We come to find out what the actual timeline was. Like, the actual period of time that Jace was doing this with her. Mm. And it was, like, 5 seconds. So, again, it makes it really hard to care.
Yep. So, like I said, we will be back on Monday after this whirlwind of a week of content for us and for all of you, because that's literally what it's for, to keep reviewing these stories. And honestly, not for nothing, doing all of these reviews and giving them the time that they deserve in spite of the time that was not given to them in terms of their release schedules, and doing them while still doing all this other content and not taking a break on them, because we want them out there for all of you to be able to listen to, watch, and react to or respond to. I think that's a great way for all of you to join us as we show off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
We care. It's the only reason why we're so upset. Because otherwise we would just stop. There wouldn't be a reason. We'd just be like, oh, okay, they're ruining it. I guess we'll just stop. Like, no, we care and we want our voices and hopefully yours to be heard as well. Yeah. If you want to, like I said, don't forget, shares go a very long way. So... we will be back. Obviously, we're going to be everywhere this week. Like I said, the day that this video comes out, we're streaming for like 7+ hours, broken up into 2 parts, but we would love to see you for any and all of it. If you have already been there and are watching this after the fact, thanks for joining us. I'm sure we had an awesome time with you. And don't forget to stay tuned for our pre-release content this Friday. And we've got lots of amazing stuff coming out here on Geek for All, over on Video Games for All, and over on Gluten Free for All as well.
Yeah.
So, that is going to be the end of this particular video. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell here and at those other channels that I just mentioned. Links down in the description box below. Once again, thank you for it. We really, really appreciate it. And for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.